All right, Masters London is over, and today I want to rank every team based on their expectations on how they performed and have some stats and awards at the end. So we'll start with DRG, who probably were expected to be in that 11th to 12th place, and that's exactly what happened. They had a close game versus XLG, which was impressive enough, but also a regional matchup, so not too much to say for them. Full Sense, on the other hand, were definitely an underperformer. I think a lot of people had them going out of the Swiss stage probably like as a borderline top six team, but they looked horrendous against Foot in their first match, and then lose a regional matchup to GE afterwards. Although Primi was the highest rated player at the event, his four teammates did about absolutely nothing. I think Leviathan um, was the lowest rated player at the event, and to be honest, the others weren't that far behind. Global probably were also expected. They did win a game versus Full Sense, had a really close game versus Lev. They probably should have won, but they still didn't make it out of the Swiss stage, so probably just about at average. NRG, however, are the first failure. They won champs, then get third at Santiago, and then don't make it out of Swiss in this one. I know that they were the third seed from Americas, but it didn't feel like they were a bad team at all. It's just that they had to go through a tough lower bracket in Americas. But yeah, definitely a failure on their part. Also, probably a borderline top 16, um, top 16, my bad, that Full Sense were expected to be, but both of them underperformed. Okay, so moving on to playoffs, the first team up is Heretics, which were a one seed from EMEA, and they just went out 0-2. I think they took a map off of Lev, but at that point in time, Lev Zelotis was pretty weak, and then they just got absolutely steamrolled by Vitality, who they beat in the finals. So I think it just showed that from the EMEA finals to playoffs, they just almost got worse, or they just did not improve at all compared to other teams like the Vitality or Lev. So just I wouldn't put them at a failure just because I didn't believe that much in them beforehand. They were obviously going to be affected by the Neon nerfs because Kosh Maras was like a heavy Neon player, but definitely an performing team from a first seed. I would say the same for G2, except you'd expect them to do even better. I mean, it was such a banger grand finals from Lev versus G2 that you'd think both of them would be able to go far, and Lev did, but G2 were just terrible. They lost to XLG in probably one of the most surprising matches in a long time, and honestly just don't look like themselves. International chokers is probably a pretty good way to put it. Um, XLG, the team that they lost to, um, definitely are an overperformer here. I'd even put them in exceeding expectations just because coming into the Swiss stage as a China team, I don't think many people believed in them. They lost pretty badly to NRG in their first match, but honestly, I thought they showed some good signs that they could go on a run, and well, they did. They beat DRG in the second match, and then Global to get into playoffs, upset G2, and then they did lose to EDG and Lev, but those were the 1 and 3 teams, so not that bad of losses. Either way, did so much better than what people were expecting. The other fifth to sixth team was Foot. Um, it wasn't unlikely that they would make it out of Swiss stage, but they did, and then they also get a win to knock out G2. So that was impressive on its own. Probably an overperforming team. You could probably have them at the as a borderline top 8 team going into the event. So top 6, not too bad for them. I think they had the potential with Zeus and Sop to go a little further, but not a bad event from them. And then Vitality coming in to EMEA Stage 1, they had a pretty rough like regular season, and then I guess they just completely flipped it in playoffs on a lower bracket run. So I would probably put them in overperformed, almost going to exceeding expectations based on how they were like a month or two ago. I don't think anyone would believe that they could be a top 4 team, and they looked really good doing it. I mean, probably the best team from the based on looks in the Swiss stage, and then their first few matches looked really good, and then I don't know what happened. Um, from the Lev and Paper X game, it just looked like they ran out of steam almost. I mean, they just got throttled. It's kind of like a sad way to go out, but they should still be happy with how they performed. Definitely an overperforming team there, and they should be able to repeat it just because they're supposed to be that super team. So should be set up good for champs, and I think they're doing really good in EWC right now. So then for the top three teams, EDG, I predicted them to win the whole event, so I'd have them at about expectations. The meta suited them pretty well. They went out against Web 03, so kind of leaves like a bad taste um, for their end, but they still beat Foot and then XLG to get to where they were. And then the loss to Paper X was a little bit hectic. They definitely could have won that match, but unfortunate for them. I think they still need to work on. Still definitely need to work on a few things. They definitely threw a lot of rounds, like a 1v5 versus XOG. I don't know how they did that, um, but top three is pretty good for them. Then we have Paper X, who were heavily favored probably going into the event, and they get second place. But after having a double map ban versus Lev, I almost want to say they underperformed because they really should have won the event. But it's probably at expectations as well. Um, it would probably be safe to say that they're even more international chokers than G2, not in the sense of like the whole tournament, but they're now 1-4 or 1-5 in grand finals, which is just pretty terrible for them to only have one Masters win for how long they've been such a good team. It's kind of sad, but just about at expectations for the event. And then Lev are also going into the exceeding expectations. They start on the Swiss stage, look good, and then after losing 0-2 to Paper X, including a 1-13 on what I thought was their second best map on Ascent, they go on a crazy lower bracket run, probably the best lower bracket run of all time. I mean, they were just dominating some teams, especially like Vitality and EDG, just winning 5 maps in a row there. And they even destroyed XLG before that, so probably 7 maps. But yeah, they looked really good, and super happy for them. King finally gets his Masters win that he's been waiting a long time for. It's kind of crazy how he couldn't win with Aspas, but with a team of a few rookies, especially Neon, they were able to get the dub. So very impressive tournament from them as a whole. Yeah. All right, so I just collected some stats and made some awards for Masters London, and let's see it. So the best rated players was Premi from Full Sense at a 1.4, which for how bad they were is honestly really impressive that he was able to be 0.15 higher than number 2, which was Paper X Envy. One of the main reasons they were looking so good, and he tried his best in the finals, but it just wasn't enough. Kiko had a 1.23 despite being eliminated in the group stage. He had that one opening match versus XLG, which was just ridiculous. Dropped like 60 something, I think, in only 2 maps. At 4, it was a three-way tie between Neon, Durka, and Vakashu, all with a 1.21, so great events from them. And then there's another three-way tie in 5th between Jing, Something, and Spike, all at 1.15. And then for reference, the median rating was about a 0.96, so all of these guys had insane tournaments. The worst rated people, coming in at 1 was Leviathan from Full Sense, a 0.65, pretty atrocious. Surprisingly, Woot was in second with a 0.67 rating. For that to be like a star player on a first seed team is something that can't be happening. I think Heretics really need to rethink how they're doing literally everything. So Jip Boys from Full Sense and Boo also from Heretics with a 0.71. And then surprisingly, Patman, who was seen as the savior of Global, ended up being tied for the 4th lowest with Killua and Life at a 0.75. Mata from NRG and Flexen from DRG both at a 0.8, so not great from DRG or Full Sense. And just for fun, I included Cruz at a 0.82 just to show how terrible all of the Full Sense people were outside of Primi, who was still somehow the best. I put together a list of the most surprising. Obviously, Woot for being that low. Same for Patman and Mata. And they just had all some pretty atrocious stats, like 57% cast from Woot or a 0.19 first deaths per round from Mata. Envy was definitely a good surprise, though. 1.25 rating and a 1.29 KD just kind of came out of nowhere. The 0.43 assists per round is also huge because I think every team that's won an event or at least gone deep always has one player that has a really high assists. So he helped out pretty much everyone. Crystal from Global, 1.13 rating. I just did not expect anything from him because I didn't know who he was before the event, but I definitely will now. Having a 28% clutch percentage is kind of crazy too. The same goes for Nick. I have watched DRG and I never thought that he was an above average player. Thought he was pretty mid, but a 29% clutch percentage on a 1.08 rating is pretty impressive. He had a very good match versus XLG, I think. Udoton, although his rating wasn't as high as a at a 1.05, he started really high, 29% clutch, and he also just had really high moments like the Lev game. He looked super impressive. It definitely had me scared. Life from DRG at a 0.75 rating. This is his 8th or ninth international, and he didn't really perform that well. But he did still have some impressive stats, like the 45% headshot percentage. And somehow he had a 0.21 first test per round, which is just insanely high, even though it's bad. And then saw it from foot, even if he had a lower rating at 1.04, he still had a 0.19 first kills per round. So I think he was probably the main reason foot were able to go on a run. And then for the awards, I've had the best player at Envy, super high rating and a grand finalist player, and plus he was probably the top player in the finals. And then the worst player, Woot, even if statistically he was only the second worst player, I think based on expectations, he should be described as the worst one. And then the biggest surprise in a good way was Footsop. I didn't really expect them to get top six, and well, his first kills were very influential in that. And then the worst surprise was Patman. He was supposed to come in and be one of the top players at the event, and ends up just doing nothing. Leading global out at 1-2. The biggest failure, G2, of course. From a one seed from Americas, that's been to who knows how many internationals now. They go out 0-2 like that. Pretty embarrassing. And then the biggest underdogs were, of course, XLG getting top six out of nowhere. So props to them. And then my finals MVP was actually Blows. They gave it to Neon, but I thought Blows overall had some clutch rounds and honestly just looked more consistent. So kind of underrated whole entire series and tournament from him. People would definitely now consider him one of the more top initiators, at least in Americas. So yeah, thanks for watching. Masters London was one of the funnest events I've been able to watch just because of time zones, maybe. But there's still a lot of good games come playoff time. So thanks.